The night breaks like old glass. Thunder crawls over the prairie, low and mean, making the skeletal cottonwoods rattle against the abandoned cabin on the north edge of Jacob Hale's land. The place has stood empty since the wildfire ate its porch and half its roof 3 summers back. Nothing left but a tilting stove, a bunk with mouse-nibbled ticking, and an iron nail on the door frame where his late wife once hung a straw hat. He does not come here. He does not say the cabin's name out loud. It is a ruin, and a memory and a wound. Rain begins with big, ugly drops that smell of clay and creosote. Jake pulls the collar of his coat up and works the gate hinge with a grunt. Boone, his yellow dog, tenses, nose lifted into the electric dark. The wind carries a thin sound, too soft for a coyote, too ragged for a calf. A human sound worn down to a thread. Boone, Jake says. The dog stands at the fence, quivering. There, a flash of lightning, white and close. In that brittle, merciless light, the cabin blinks into view like a crime scene. Roof sheared, window blown, the door hunched on its broken hinge, and something in the doorway. A figure braced against the jamb, one hand splayed on the wood, barefoot, mud up to the shin, the other arm wrapped across her belly. The thunder answers late. Boone barks once, not at the cabin but at the space around it, as if the air itself has gone wrong. Jake is moving before he knows he's decided. The ground sucks at his boots. The weeds whip his jeans, burrs clinging like tiny teeth. He pushes the door and it yawns wide on rot. The smell inside is mold and mouse nests, and an old grief he thought he'd learned to walk around. Rain needles through holes in the roof, each drop a cold pinprick on the skin. She stands there tremoring, young, 20-something, a dark bruise flowering under one eye. Her hair is plastered to her temples, her breath shallow and fast. Beneath the soaked shirt, her belly is unmistakable. Late term, the gravity of it pulling at her spine. She looks at him and then past him, scanning the rain like it has a face. "They followed me," she whispers. The words snag. "Please." Jake hears the storm, and under it, the old truck road east of the fence. He imagines wheels in the washboard ruts, headlights sweeping the cottonwoods like a searchlight. He imagines the way men talk when they aren't afraid of being heard. He shrugs off his coat and puts it around her shoulders. The coat hangs, heavy with rain and body heat, like a loan he can't afford. "You're hurt," he says. She shakes her head and the lie falls apart on her lips. "I tripped. I fell." Her gaze skitters to the empty bunk, the stove. "I didn't know it was yours. I was just—" There was a light. "There's no power out here." Jake stops. The cabin holds a low hum, the way a church does even when it's empty, as if everything that ever happened inside it has been breathing all this time. On the nail by the door, the straw hat is gone, of course, but the nail is still there, and his throat tightens because he remembers the day he pounded it in, how Emma laughed at how crooked he made it. Lightning again. Closer. Boone growls, a deep, bone-level sound. From the road comes a new noise, not thunder. The distant cough of an engine, the clink of gravel under tires. "They said they'd take me back," the woman says, and her voice, even small, is a flare. "They said the baby wasn't mine anymore." Jake feels something long and rusted turn inside him, a hinge that has not moved since the hospital room where the monitors went flat, and the nurse folded his wife's hands. He has spent years letting the land take him apart and put him back together. Fences, feed, the son a metronome. He has learned the trick of needing less. But this is not something the land can swallow. "What's your name?" he asks. She swallows. "Mara." He nods once sharply like sealing a deal. "Mara, we're leaving." But she glances at her feet, at the rain, at the night's giant mouth. "That's my truck on the south road. Boone'll clear us a path." Jake lifts his chin at the dog. "Heel." Outside, the storm inhales. In that breath, a beam of light ghosts across the far tree line, then another crossing it. 2 vehicles, slow, dragging the dark with them. Mara's hand finds his sleeve. He feels the tremor travel up his arm and into his chest where the old hinge has finally swung wide open. "Whatever's chasing you," he says, and does not look back at the cabin because he knows if he does, he will see Emma at the stove, lifting the kettle, smiling. "It won't find you here." The thunder this time does not come from the sky. By morning, Jacob Hale usually counts quiet as profit. Coffee in a chipped enamel mug, 2 slices of toast cut thick from yesterday's loaf, a checklist scrawled on a torn feed sack. Fix north fence, check well pump, call Harlan about the Baylor belts. He spreads peanut butter with a pocket knife and eats standing up. because sitting invites memory and memory floods the room. The farmhouse is small, patched and honest. Oak table scarred by years of work, mismatched chairs, a wall calendar with last year's dates because he couldn't face tearing down the month where Emma's handwriting lingered. Life is narrow by design. Narrow keeps you from falling. Out here, money arrives late and leaves early. Jake hauls odd loads for neighbors when the fields don't pay. Firewood, scrap, one time a piano with its keys bleached to bone. He owes the bank just enough to feel the weight of their letters, but not enough for them to come take the roof. He keeps his head down. He does not drink in town. He talks to Boone more than he talks to people, and Boone answers better than most. If you're watching this and you've ever patched a tire with baling twine or counted quarters to buy diesel, you know the kind of life I'm describing. It's the kind that asks every morning, "Are you here?" And that's a fair question. Before we go on, I'd like to ask you for something simple that helps more than you think. Subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Small channels like this one grow one person at a time, and I read every single message at the kitchen table where the light comes in just so. Your stories keep these stories honest. Back to the storm. When Jake finds Mara in the cabin, something shifts. The lines he drew to keep the world in manageable pieces blur. He carries her across the weeds, Boone ghosting ahead, ears like radar. The mud wants their boots, sucks at them like the land is trying to hold them in place, but Jake knows the dry bumps underfoot, the hummocks that hold, the way the field pitches near the old creek bed. The truck is a red 95 with a driver's door that only opens from inside. He helps her up and around and in, like she's made of thin glass. She clutches his coat to her chest. "They'll find us," she says. "They always do. Not if I don't let them," he says, which is not a promise and not a prayer, but something with the shape of both. They fishtail onto the south road. Rain hammers the windshield. Wipers thock, thock, thock. In the rear view, two sets of headlights peel off the county blacktop and creep along the fence line like lanterns in a graveyard. Jake kills his lights and noses the truck into a drainage cut, sage brushing the doors. The engine ticks. Boone pants, fog painting the glass. "Who are they?" Jake asks. Mara stares at her knees. "Finally, men who wear clean boots, men who never say please." She breathes. "I was a housekeeper. I shouldn't have seen what I saw." The next thunder is a door slamming somewhere far away, but the sound lands inside Jake's ribs. He thinks of the hat nail, of Emma's laugh, of the cabin that used to be a future, and now is only a landmark people use to give directions to strangers. If you're still with me, this is where the story stops being weather and begins being weathered. Subscribe, drop a comment, and settle in, because something is buried out there on the north edge of Jake's land, under ash and years and a promise left unfinished. And what's chasing Mara knows it, or thinks it does. The storm walks off on stiff legs by dawn, leaving the fields slick and silver. A fog rises from the furrows, softening the fence posts so they look like hymn notes on a page. The world smells rinsed. In that quiet you can hear the well pump far off, the clink of the windmill's tail. Jake eases the truck behind the barn where the cottonwoods break the sightline from the road. He gets Mara inside the farmhouse, towels her hair, sets a kettle on the stove, his hands finding old tasks as if the body remembers what the mind refused. Her eyelids flutter when the steam ghosts her face. Boone stations himself by the door, chin on paws, the guardian of thresholds. "There's a clinic 30 miles west," Jake says. Doc Randall won't ask questions. Mara flinches at the word clinic. Her hand finds her belly like an oath. "They'll have people there." "Maybe," he says. "But you need a check." She nods, just once. "I didn't steal anything," she adds, sudden and fierce. "They act like I did." She takes the cup he offers, fingers around the heat. "I cleaned rooms at the Carter Ranch. 3 nights ago, I found a ledger in the office while I was dusting. Names, dates, amounts, people paying cash for papers, for babies." Her throat works. "I put it back, I swear I did, but he knew. Mr. Carter. He looked at me like I wasn't there anymore. Royce Carter owns more miles than the sky. His trucks have logos that gleam like teeth. He pays men who never take off their sunglasses. He is not the kind of neighbor who borrows sugar." Jake feels the hinge again, that old iron inside. He rinses his cup in the sink and keeps his voice level. "And you ran." "I ran." Mara's eyes shine not with tears but with the effort of not making any. "I thought if I crossed the river by the power lines and kept to the fence I could make town before morning. Your cabin," she swallows. "I thought it was empty. I didn't mean to. You meant to live, Jake says. A tap, tap, tap at the back porch window interrupts them. Not knuckles. Metal. Boone is already up. A low thunder in his chest. Jake moves the curtain with 2 fingers and sees the county sheriff's Suburban nosed up by the woodpile. Deputy Harlan Greeley leans on the rail, hat tipped back, knuckles rapping a rhythm on the glass with a coin. A friend, once. They baled hay together, fixed a ditch pump in the dark. Men don't stay friends when grief makes them choose the size of the room they can stand to be in. Jake opens the door but not the screen. You're up early, he says. Harlan thumbs the coin. Silver dollar old his nervous tick. He doesn't smile. Royce Carter's looking for a girl. Said she ran in the storm. Said she's in a bad way. His eyes tick past Jake's shoulder, a half inch. You seen anyone out this way? Jake's pulse is a steady drum. He keeps his breath slow. Not unless you count a calf with more curiosity than sense. Harlan studies his face like it has clues written across it. Royce says the girl trespassed. Stole something important. Royce says a lot of things. Harlan flips the coin and palms it. Slick. You still keeping the cabin standing? Thought the county'd have condemned it by now. Jake feels physically with the precision of a nail prick that Harlan already knows too much. The cabin is a bruise. Every man in 3 counties knows where Jacob Hale hurts. You here to enforce county code, Harlan? Or to run errands for Carter? The deputy's mouth tightens. A small weather change moves over his face. I'm here to keep the peace. That what you call it when a rich man hollers? The coin stops. If you see her, Harlan says, quiet now, call me. He pushes his card through the slit of the screen, the motion intimate as a confession. Please. Jake leaves the card on the sill. He waits until the Suburban rolls out slow, dust building under the tires. Mara is not in the kitchen when he turns. She's in the hallway, pressed flat against the wall, eyes huge in the half-light. You don't have to be afraid of Harlan, Jake says. He's a decent man with an indecent boss. Decent men follow orders, she says, and he can't argue because he has been a decent man following the orders of fear for years. They leave just before noon. Jake takes the dry creek bed south, then the old logging track nobody uses since the mill closed, roads that taught him patience and dust. The sky has gone high and empty. Heat bakes the rain up out of the soil. In the truck, Mara tells him in starts and fragments. The ledger, the baby brokered like a calf at auction, the quiet way the foreman looked at her when she asked about the missing housekeeper who never came back for her last paycheck. At mile 8, the truck coughs, a stutter Jake knows. He coaxes it, listens, coaxes again. The fuel gauge is a liar, the filter, a clogged throat. They limp into a windbreak of Russian olives and coast to a stop. Boone whuffs at the sudden silence. Jake pops the hood, steam hot on his face. It's fine, he says, though the word fine hasn't meant anything true in a long time. A sound threads the trees, the high electric whine of a drone. Mara's head snaps up. Boone rises, hackles at attention. The sound pinwheels, fixes, descends. A tiny eye passing like a dragonfly over the olives, pausing. Jake watches it watch them. It tilts, curious, then lifts. A wasp in a jar, and zips north. They'll know, Mara says. Let them, Jake says, not because he believes the bravado, but because it's the only wall left to lean on. He swaps the filter with the spare from the toolbox, fingers black to the knuckle. While he works, a memory finds him. Emma in that same cabin years ago, hand on her belly, laughing with surprise at the quick kick under his palm. The second kick came slower. The third never did. The cabin is not just a wound. It is a grave of hope. There is something buried there. Not bones, not ash. Something in him he sealed up with nails and silence. The truck starts. Relief loosens his back. He eases them onto the track again and heads not west to the clinic but north. Because if a drone saw them here, the clinic is already watched. And because the hinge inside him has swung wide and shows a door he has not opened in years, the cabin itself, the place where he promised himself he would never again ask the world for a child. Trust me, he says. One more stop. Then we'll make a run nobody sees coming. Mara studies his face as if weighing her life against whatever she finds there. She nods. Boone settles with a sigh, though his eyes stay bright, pricked to the edges of fields. The cabin waits in its clearing like a fable made of splinters. Jake parks under the cottonwoods, their leaves clapping dry applause. The heat brings up the smell of char and damp rot. He walks to the doorframe and puts his hand where the nail is, feeling the iron's faint coolness, the smear of rust. He looks up under the eave to the place where the pastel blue tin Emma loved once hung to catch rain. He almost says her name. "What are we doing?" Mara asks. "Fixing the one thing I can still fix," he says. He squats at the hearthstone, pries the corner with his pocket knife, and lifts. Beneath the stone is a ledger, not paper but metal, a flattened biscuit tin with a bent hinge and a soldier's stubbornness. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, is a thumb drive, old and scratched, and a photo of Emma sitting on this very threshold, eyes crinkled, one palm on her belly. Behind her, a lumbering shadow of Jake with his arm raised in salute, caught mid-laugh. He had hidden the drive here the week after the funeral. It contains what he once dug up in the cabin's floorboards, a folder of emails and scans Emma had kept for a story she never got to write about adoption scams moving through the county. He hid it because revenge made him feel like a man he didn't want to be. He hid it because he thought he could shrink his life down to chores and survive. Now the same rot has bloomed bigger and taken another shape. Mara watches him slide the drive into his pocket. "What is that?" "Proof," he says, "of what men like Carter do when they think nobody with a name will speak." From the trees a branch cracks. Not wind, boots, more than one pair. Boone is already at the door, head thrust into the air, a low note gathering. The pressure that's been hovering out at the fence line steps closer. It wears clean boots. It doesn't say please. They come in a staggered file, 3 men in Carhartt jackets with new creases, baseball caps pulled low. The front man carries himself like he expects doors to open. Royce Carter's foreman, Nash, with a snake's easy smile and a scar on his knuckle that looks like a white river on a map. Behind him, a kid too eager. Third, a big man who saves his words like money. "Mr. Hale," Nash calls, easy as Sunday. "Small world. Us meeting at your old love nest." Jake steps out onto the porch that used to be a porch. The boards creak under his boots. He holds his hands where men can see them. Boone stands to his left, silent and carved, the color of wheat. "You're trespassing," Jake says. Nash puts a palm to his chest in mock offense. "We're neighborly, checking on you after the big blow. Storms move folks around. You never know who might blow in." His eyes slip past Jake and touch Mara like a finger. "Afternoon, miss." Mara doesn't answer. Her hand is on her belly, protective, small. "Royce figures you found something that belongs to him," Nash says. "Girl ran off. Took a ledger with sensitive information. Not something a simple man like you needs to get tangled in, Hale. Hand her over, we're gone in 10. Jake tilts his head, as if he misheard the price of a bale. "You boys hear a cow low? Because that's the only thing that makes you think you can count time on my land." Nash's smile flattens. "You got dead, old man. Folks talk. Bank talks. Royce listens." He taps the porch post with 2 knuckles. "We help friends. You ain't my friends," Jake says. The anger is clean. Not hot. Not wild. Just a steady line on a map he has chosen. Nash looks to the big man, who doesn't blink. "Find the drive," Nash says. "I'll get the girl." The kid moves first, quick and jittery, toward the doorway. Boone shifts. A warning, teeth just visible. "Call your dog," Nash says. Jake doesn't. He looks at Mara. She looks back with the next thing down from fear, resolves bare bones. "Back window," he says to her low. "Creek bed. 10 paces south, then the cottonwood with the double trunk. Wait for my whistle." Mara licks rain-chapped lips and nods once. The kid lunges. Boone launches, all muscle and momentum and grace, intercepting with a shoulder bump that knocks the kid off the porch into a tangle of goldenrod. The kid yelps. Not bit. Boone knows the difference between a warning and a war. Nash's hand goes to his belt. Not a gun. Something shorter, duller, meaner. A baton. "I asked nice," he says. "Try asking true," Jake replies and steps into him, close enough to smell store-bought aftershave under the field dust. He speaks low enough that the big man has to lean to hear. "I've got something that puts Royce under a light, and there's more where that came from. You walk away now, you get to pretend you never heard me say the word federal. You stay, you'll learn what a small man looks like when the right eyes are on him." Nash's mouth ticks, a near smile trying to be born and failing. "You think you scare me with letters on a jacket? I think you're smart enough to know you ain't the only one who can read," Jake says. The big man moves. He isn't fast, but he is inevitable. He takes the steps in 2 easy thumps and reaches a hand like a backhoe for Jake's shirt. Boone shifts angles. Jake lets the hand grab cloth, turns his body so the pull becomes a step forward instead of a yank. Old bar fight geometry he hasn't used since he was young and stupider. The big man stumbles. Nash takes his chance, sliding past toward the doorway and Mara. Mara doesn't scream. She slips like a ribbon through the half gap between wall and man and is gone into the cabin's shadow. Nash follows, quick and sure. The kid hauls himself up, cussing, and reaches for a length of chain coiled by the steps. Boone plants himself between kid and door, teeth out now, a sound in his throat that is not a growl, but a promise. Boone, Jake says. The dog holds. Inside the cabin, Nash's boots knock on the floorboards. Come on out, sweetheart. No need to make a mess in your condition. The baton clicks as it extends. Jake moves. Not fast. Not slow. He steps into the big man's chest and shoves, hard, catching the man off balance and sending him backward into the porch post which groans like an old hinge. The porch lists. Dust falls in threads from the rafters. House falls down, Jake says, breath steady. We're all ghosts. Nash appears in the doorway with an empty hand and a furious face. She's out back, he barks to the kid, and the kid bolts. Boone on him like a shadow stitched at his heel. Mara darts along the cabin's west side, one hand on her belly, the other steadying on the scorched siding. The double-trunk cottonwood looms ahead. She slips behind it like a coin into a slot. Boone keeps the kid at the corner with presence and intent more than tooth. The big man steps off the porch slow, learning this terrain, and then the fourth person arrives. Not from the road, from the line of trees north, where the past keeps its secrets. A shape in a tan shirt and a badge that catches the sun's knife edge. Harlan Greeley, hat low, suburban parked under camouflage of dust and leaves. Everybody hold, Harlan says. His voice is not loud, but it is the voice men use when they put down a fence stretcher and decide who they are. Nash shows teeth. Deputy, we're collecting property on behalf of Mr. Carter. Don't need county on this. Funny thing, Harlan says, thumbing his old coin. Property don't usually run on 2 feet and ask for help. Nash's gaze flicks to Harlan's gun, then back to Jake, calculating new math. You picking a side, Greeley? Harlan rolls the coin over his knuckles, the old habit that means he's already decided. I'm picking the law I swore to, not the one you rent by the hour. The big man shifts his weight. The kid tries to inch around Boone and thinks better. Mara breathes small and fast behind the cottonwood. Jake's heart is a neat hammer. Deputy, Jake says, voice even. You ever wonder why Royce keeps a man with a drone when he could just look out a window? Harlan doesn't glance up. Been wondering a while. Jake pulls the thumb drive from his pocket and holds it between 2 fingers like a relic. You've got a radio and a inbox. I've got the one thing Royce can't stand, a mirror. Nash moves like a switch flipping. He goes for Jake's wrist. Boone chooses then to end the waiting. He lunges, a perfect arc, not at flesh but at the baton in Nash's hand, teeth clamping metal with a sound like a bell. The shock of it jerks Nash's arm. The baton clatters and Boone whips away with it, triumphant, vanishing under the porch. The kid curses and dives to grab. The porch sags more, dust coughing up like the cabin is trying to speak. Harlan's gun is out. Hands, he says. The big man lifts his, palms wide. Nash's go up slower, hoodie sleeves sliding back to show tendons like cables. The kid freezes with a fist on the porch skirt, Boone's breath hot in his face. Call your boss, Harlan says to Nash, and there's something new under the sheriff's calm, something like a man cutting a new gate where the cattle chose to walk. Tell him this is a county matter now. Tell him to come polite if he wants to talk. Nash's eyes are 2 chips of mirror. You'll regret this. Maybe, Harlan says, but not today. Jake feels the cabin at his back, the iron nail under his palm. He lets breath out slow. He has not won anything. He has not lost anything yet. But something has changed. The old hinge inside him is not just open, it is oiled. Royce Carter does not come polite. He arrives in a black truck that throws its own shadow. 2 more follow, dust boiling behind like a bad thought. He steps out in a shirt the color of money and boots that have never met mud, smiling the way a man smiles when he expects applause. Men arrange themselves around him, as if the earth tilts slightly toward wherever he plants his heels. Afternoon, Jacob, he says, like it's Sunday after church and they're arguing over pie. Deputy, he nods at Harlan, who doesn't nod back. Heard there's a misunderstanding. Clear it up then, Harlan says. Royce's smile warms like a light turned up. A young woman employed briefly at my ranch took private property. Ledgers with confidential client details, medical information, that sort of delicate thing. We simply wish to retrieve what's ours and ensure her well-being. Mara steps from behind the cottonwood, as if pulled by a line, chin forward. You mean the ledger that prices babies like cattle? Royce's eyes flick to her belly, and away with surgeon's precision. The warmth drops out of his smile like a trap door. Careful, miss. Words like that stick to the mouth that says them. Harlan holds a palm hip high. A signal. Let's keep hands where I can see them. Jake feels the thumb drive like a coin in his pocket, heavy with worth. The field has gone bright and stark, colors bleached by the noon sun. Wind combs the cottonwoods. The leaves whisper like a jury. You brought your own judge, Jacob? Royce asks, gesturing at the cabin. This place always did make you sentimental. Jake tastes iron. He thinks of Emma on the step, one palm on her belly, the way she warned him against letting grief choose his words for him. He meets Royce Carter's eyes and for once does not think about the difference in their boots. I brought proof, he says, and a witness, and a lawman who still recognizes a human being. Royce laughs softly. Deputy Greeley's up for re-election. He's confused about where the river actually runs. Funny thing about rivers, Harlan says. They find their path whether you like it or not. It happens fast and slow at once the way wrecks do. One of Royce's men shifts, standing in Jake's peripheral vision where the shadow between two cottonwood trunks looks like an invitation. Boone twitches, reading the air. Mara braces. The kid with the chain makes a nervous half-joke to the big man who doesn't answer. Nash's phone chimes with a text, and he flinches like a guilty thought. Royce, eyes still on Jake, flicks 2 fingers. The man at the edge moves. He's after Mara, not the drive. He covers ground with 3 long strides. Jake steps to block. The man shoves, not hard but cruelly efficient, the shove of a bully who learned where bodies break. Mara stumbles. Her hand flies off her belly and she goes to her knees in the hard dirt with a sound like a prayer breaking. Boone is there in an explosion of muscle and dust, but the man kicks, the kind that aims at ribs. Boone yelps, rolls, and comes up again low, all the pity gone out of him. Enough, Harlan says, and the sound is a report. The men freeze. His gun is steady. His gaze is not frightened. It is precise. Royce Carter, you and your men are done moving on this property. You will step back or you will lie down. On whose warrant? Royce asks, amused. On mine, Harlan says, and on the one that's about to arrive with a federal seal if I hit send. He taps his radio with the muzzle, calm as a surgeon pointing out a tumor. I've got probable cause and a concerned citizen with documentation. You brought the rest of the cause with your boots. Royce's jaw works, the smile torn. You're making a mistake, Harlan. Maybe, Harlan says again, but not today. Jake helps Mara up. Her breath comes short. Sweat beads at her hairline despite the breeze. It's starting, she whispers, eyes startled by an inward lightning he cannot see. I think it's starting. The world narrows to a circle around her face. Emma's goes through it like a ghost and does not stop. And for a heartbeat, Jake is 2 men. The one who failed to bring Emma home, and the one who can keep this woman and her child alive long enough to make a different kind of promise. Then we're done here, Jake says, and the quiet in his voice is a straight line drawn across a map. He turns to Harlan. We need the clinic. Now. Harlan nods once and steps backward toward his Suburban, never lowering the gun. Jacob, front seat, Mara, back with me. To Royce. You'll want to open that inbox I mentioned. He jerks his chin at Nash. And you? Tell your boss he's welcome to file a complaint. Nash shifts, looking for a door that isn't there. This isn't over, he says. But the bravado sounds thin in the open air. Nothing ever is, Jake says. They move. It's a choreography nobody practiced, but everyone knows. Boone arcs between men like a sheepdog with wolves. Harlan keeps his muzzle on the broadest chest. Jake and Mara make the truck. The Suburban's engine clucks awake. As the vehicles roll, Royce's voice follows, silk and wire. You can't outrun me, Hale. I am the road. Jake doesn't look back. So go be a road, he says to the windshield. See if anyone chooses you. The clinic is small and boxy, and smells like lemon wipes and hope. Doc Randall's hands are steady, his eyes lined with the kind of tired that comes from years of being the only one in 60 miles who knows how to stitch a scalp at midnight. He guides Mara into a room, asks questions in a voice that makes time walk slower. Boone lies just outside the door, one ear cocked, tail tapping once each time Mara exhales. Harlan stands in the hallway with his radio murmuring. He watches the window with the patience of a man who has learned to count seconds honestly. Jake leans against the wall and stares at his hands, which have dug post holes and repaired engines and buried love. "Federal agents on the line," Harlan says finally, and hands Jake his phone. "Says your drive could end up meaning something." Jake looks at the door where Mara breathes and thinks of a ledger that prices babies and a hat nail, and a cabin that is both a scar and a church. "It better," he says, and his voice is not angry. It is a plow at the right depth. From inside the room a sound rises, the high, fierce cry of a new thing that has not learned fear yet. Everything else in the building stops and tilts toward it without meaning to. The ticking clock, the radio's whisper, the dog's heart, Jake's life. The cry slices the afternoon, makes a shape the wind can fit its hands around. Jake closes his eyes. When he opens them, Harlan is looking at him with something like apology and something like relief. "You did good," Harlan says. Jake shakes his head. "She did." Harlan almost smiles. Sometimes doing good is just not letting the worst thing happen. Sirens lift in the distance then, a sound like a decision you can hear. Not county, state, maybe federal writing their weather. Royce's shadow, wherever he stands, lengthens and thins. Evening lays a cool hand on the clinic's roof. The wind carries the peppery smell of mesquite and the diesel breath of a highway miles off. The sky holds that long western light that forgives shabby paint and makes dust look like gold. Harlan's cruiser idles under a cottonwood, radio whispering to other radios that make up a net. A plain sedan with federal plates sits 2 spaces down. No drama in its lines. Men with badges talk in low voices about warrants and custody of evidence and chain of this and that. The thumb drive sits on a clipboard like a relic, photographed, logged, given a case number that will look cold and bureaucratic until the day it becomes a verdict. In the ward, Mara sleeps, the new child swaddled against her collarbone, their breaths braided. Doc Randall says words like stable and lucky and keep her quiet, which is his way of naming miracles without alarming them. Boone snuffles the cuff of Jake's jeans and rests his head on Jake's boot, satisfied in the blunt way good dogs are when a circle closes. Royce Carter does not come to the clinic. A lawyer does, with hair like shellac and a briefcase that locks with a crisp click. He asks for things. He is told to wait. He leaves without meeting anyone's eyes. Paper moves, not as fast as a storm, but with more certainty. Harlan walks Jake back out into the warm blue of the parking lot. He rubs his thumb along the face of his old coin. "Bank's been leaning on you," he says, not a question. Jake huffs a laugh without humor. "Since before you learned to flip that dollar." "Funny you say that," Harlan says. "Lady from the state AG's office asked me if I knew any folks Royce might have leaned on to keep quiet. I may have mentioned that a certain note on a certain farm's mortgage smells like a carrot on a stick." He flicks the coin. It flashes and lands true. "You might find a friendlier banker come Monday." Jake looks past Harlan at the far line of the sky where the fields pour themselves into distance. "I don't need favors." "Not a favor," Harlan says. "Just undoing a thumb on a scale." Jake nods. Slow. He feels the weight in his chest shift. Less a stone than a tool now. Useful. "I'll take fair." They stand quiet a moment, listening to the world tuck itself in. The clinic's fluorescent hum gets softer as the day tilts. Or maybe they just stop hearing it. "You going back to the cabin?" Harlan asks. "Tomorrow," Jake says. "With a shovel. There's rot in the sill needs cutting out, and I got this notion the place might hold weight again if I set a proper beam." He rubs his palm, remembering the feel of the nail. Might hang a hat even. Harlan glances at the window where Mara sleeps, where the small bundle lifts and falls. "You going to keep to yourself, Jake? Or you going to let people in when they knock?" Jake doesn't answer right away. He has been a man of few doors for a long time. He pictures the North Field bright in winter, coyote prints stippling the creek ice. He pictures a woman carrying a child across that field, and the way the child's first cry cut through everything false. He pictures the cabin with new timber, and a pot of coffee on the stove, and boots by the door that track honest dirt. "I'm going to listen before I bolt it," he says finally. "Seems like I've misheard a lot of knocks." Harlan tips his hat, half a benediction. "That'll do." Inside, Jake stands at Mara's doorway. She wakes, eyes clear in the strange calm that follows weather. "Is it over?" she asks. "Not for them," he says. "For you. For now." He shifts, awkward in his own kindness. "You've got a place to go?" She hesitates, then nods. A cousin in Tucson. She'll take us. I'll work. I'll keep my head down until it's safe. Keep your head up when you can, he says. Down's heavy. She smiles, small and wondering, like a person learning a new language on the fly. Thank you, Jacob. He looks at the baby, who has the remote, furious dignity of all newborns. Thank Boone, he says, and the dog thumps his tail as if he understands English and also jokes. On his way out, Jake stops at the reception desk and leaves a folded envelope with Doc Randall, crumpled bills, the sum total of cash that won't bounce. For diapers, he says, when the doctor opens his mouth to argue, and for the coffee you're about to need. Outside, the sky is a deep, rinsed blue. The stars will be sharp tonight. He can feel it in his teeth. If you've walked this whole road with me, through the storm, across the fields, into the old wound and out again, thank you. Stories like this don't put new shingles on a roof, but they do something stranger. They make a man notice when the wind changes and choose, just once, to lean into it. If you want more of these, subscribe and watch the next video I've linked right here on the end screen. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me the last time you answered a knock and we're glad you did. No guesswork. No fuss. Only what matters, the price and the decision. And sometimes when the night is long, the heart that learns to say yes. Watch the next video and subscribe to the channel now.